us for the continuation of our groundbreaking video series where we are documenting the digitization of the landlord lifecycle, and we're doing this in association with our friends and partners at Lendlord. And there's been a huge direction of travel towards digitization in the property sector, and we are kind of documenting each phase of the landlord lifecycle where landlords can use digital tools and products to enhance their landlord life. And we're also looking at the different areas of the property sector that are moving towards digitization or have already been digitized. And today we are still in the acquisition phase, the phase where landlords are going through all the processes to acquire an investment property. And finance, of course, is a huge part of this phase. And today we're going to be talking about bridging finance. And I'm delighted to be joined by Arieh, who is the broker for Lendlord. And Arieh, great to welcome you to the call. This is a really exciting topic to talk about, isn't it? Because bridging is like another tool in the landlord or property investor's toolbox, and it has become more mainstream in recent times, hasn't it?
Hi, Vanessa. Thanks for inviting me. Yes, bridging finance is a crucial tool for all landlords, particularly when trying to buy a property with a limited time scope, for example, buying in an auction, or trying to do something with finance that a standard lender may not like, including developing a property or renovating a property, which for some buy-to-let lenders is just not something they'll do. So bridging really is essential.
It is, and I think it's interesting to give a flavour of what it takes to get bridging finance, because we're kind of stressing throughout this month that you really do need to be finance fit. You have to have all your documents ready. You have to be in a position to access finance. And bridging is typically the domain of the more experienced landlord with a bit of a track record, but it is open to newcomers as well, isn't it?
Yes, with all finance, you need to be ready with your documents. That's key. Lenders are very specific about the documents that they want, and we would always advise all clients to be ready with their accounts, with their portfolio information, with bank statements, and just being able to demonstrate their ability to service the loan, which is obviously what lenders want. Bridging is slightly different, of course, because you don't normally need to prove affordability, and that's the benefit of bridging, because the fees and interest can be capitalized on the loan. And that's what the big difference is between bridging and perhaps standard buy-to-let mortgages.
So Arieh, what would you say are the key things that anybody thinking of using bridging finance needs to understand about it?
They need to be aware of the process and how it differs from a traditional buy-to-let mortgage. In particular, they may have higher upfront costs in terms of legal fees. Fees and interest are generally capitalized on the loan, and they need to be aware that the overall cost is much higher. And that's something that new borrowers or new borrowers to bridging do not necessarily recognize. But the process can also be much easier than a standard buy-to-let mortgage, particularly with the speed of arrangement.
And speed is one of the key things about bridging. It can put you in a very strong position to put yourself forward as a really good contender for a deal. But, it's very important that newbies understand that bridging is short-term lending. I think, the maximum you should really think about is a maximum of a year, but please correct me if I'm wrong on that. And also they do need to have a plan A exit and perhaps a plan B exit as well.
There always has to be an exit strategy. And yes, it is very short term. It is literally what the word says, bridging. It is to bridge between the purchase and obtaining. It's to bridge, to enable the deal to actually happen. It is not a long-term solution. The interest rates are much higher, but they do represent an excellent solution, particularly if you're buying in, for example, an auction where you are given a limited amount of time to complete. There are very few lenders who would be able to perform within that time and provide you with a mortgage offer, particularly if you're borrowing in a limited company name. A bridging contract can definitely satisfy that requirement very well.
I think one of the things I'd like to clarify is it's kind of a case of which comes first, the chicken or the egg, because to get a deal, you need to be proceedable. You need to show that you can complete on the deal. So is it a case of working with a broker and getting some kind of decision in principle first, or is it a case of getting the deal and then going to get the finance? What's the best way for people to maximize their chances of using bridging, to get a good deal?
Either way, I would always suggest having the finance solution arranged in advance. And you need to decide upfront whether you're going down the buy-to-let standard mortgage route or you're going to go down the bridging route. They really are two distinct options, and a borrower should be aware of which route they're taking up front. It's unlikely that you could obtain a buy-to-let mortgage within 28 days, which is the standard completion period for an auction, or if you need development finance to refurbish, most lenders will require the property to be habitable at the point of completion, hence the reason why bridging provides for that situation.
And do you get something like a decision in principle from a bridging lender to show you're proceedable?
There are a few that will provide it. At Lendlord, through the online platform, we can provide a decision through the platform, and we will stand by that decision in most situations subject to valuation. Valuation is key to everything with mortgages, as the valuer will comment on the suitability of the security. But certainly through the Lendlord platform, we can provide an agreement in principle and a rate upfront.
Well, that's really, really helpful to anybody that's looking to use this method of acquiring a property. And that leads me nicely on to talk about the digitization of finance, because we're seeing it in the sector. There's online mortgage brokers, there's online lenders, there's online loan comparison sites. It's a definite direction of travel, isn't it?
Yes. Well, borrowers are fed up with a lengthy paper trail. Endless amounts of paperwork, and in particular, lengthy application forms, particularly for bridging. They want a clean, easy transaction, and that's what we've tried to do at Lendlord. There's an online process. It literally takes a couple of minutes. There's no application form. We will request a few bits of documentation just for standard due diligence, and subject to the borrower agreeing to the terms, we would then put everything in the hands of our solicitors to take forward. It can happen in a very short period of time. We've really focused the process on the borrower to try and make it as easy as possible.
Now, you're a broker, Arieh, and you're not fearful of the digitization of lending, are you? We're not saying that people are going to be taken out of the equation. You're always going to be in the background supporting your clients, even if they are using digital application methods, aren't you?
I think that the digitization helps the broker too. It shortens the process. Some lenders are using open banking to verify income. That helps the borrower, that helps the broker. So at every stage of the process, digitization, in my view, helps the broker. We certainly prefer to deal with lenders as a broker who are using digital methods than old-fashioned paper methods. We're not interested in lengthy application forms anymore. It helps nobody.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned open banking there, because one of the things that we've been talking about through the series is how a lot of different digital interfaces can all work together and make a much smoother process for all parties, and that's the perfect example of that. Now, let's talk a little bit about Lendlord, because Lendlord also has its own bridging lending as well, where you can lend direct from Lendlord, can't you?
Yes, Lendlord has set up its own bridging funding just to make the process that much easier. The system holds portfolio information already. The system holds so much information to verify the kind of person who's borrowing. It was an obvious thing to do to then offer bridging finance through the platform, once again, just completely removing the paper process with an application. It is so straightforward. In a couple of minutes, you've pretty much got a decision.
So people watching this, Arieh, there's some people that are still not convinced that digital is the way to go. They still want to carry on in their old ways, their old analog ways, using paper and, actual files and things like this. They haven't really been able to move from an analog mindset to a digital mindset. What would you say to those people who are kind of still, I'm just going to carry on how I've always done it?
I would suggest they try it. And the reason is they may not be able to continue with their paper method for much longer, as all lenders are acquiring digital documents. It's far more secure, besides being more efficient. It's more cost effective. And they should just try it. People are scared of technology. They should embrace it step by step. Try one small thing at a time, get used to it, and move on to the next step. Moving over to open banking is a challenge for some people. It's almost like opening their banking system. The reality is that no person actually looks at that information. It's a digital process. It's a system, an algorithm that looks at that process to verify the information. And people should feel quite secure and comfortable with the digitization.
Well, I think so. And also we have been promoting this concept of living your life, your property investor life on a dashboard. And one of the things that we should really highlight about the benefit of digital tools is that you actually do end up with an audit trail that you can check online. It's a bit like, when you're having something delivered to your home, you get these texts saying, it's on its way, and then you can go online and track it. It's very similar for the Lendlord digital finance as well, because you do end up with a dashboard that tells you where your application is at, if you're missing any documents. So, I can see the benefits very, very clearly.
Yeah, there's a very friendly user interface. You see stage by stage what's going on. There's complete interaction between borrower and lender. And that's the way we want to do it. It's built based on feedback that we got from consumers. I've come from a broking background, and I've seen the frustrations that we as brokers have experienced. And what we've tried to do is actually make that much, much more streamlined by developing this for the consumer and just making the whole process much more user-friendly, giving back control to the consumer, to the borrower.
Indeed. So we're talking about speed, transparency, audit trails, just making everything simpler, faster, more secure, and getting people's deals financed really, really quickly.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining me on this call, Arieh. And we have really finished our tour around what we're calling the acquisition phase of the digitization of the landlord lifecycle. And next week, we will be moving into ownership, management and growth. And this is the longest phase of the landlord lifecycle, because you might be in a relationship with a property for 20, 25 years, because we all know that buy-to-let is a very long-term investment. And Arieh, even moving forwards, landlords are going to constantly need access to finance. They're looking to grow, they need to remortgage, they may change strategy and need a different finance. So actually, finance is just a massive part of the entire landlord life cycle, isn't it?
Finance is essential for most landlords. Without finance, they can't buy the property. The question is, how efficiently can they obtain that finance, and how cheaply can they obtain it? I guess the two go together, and that's why the service of a broker or an efficient platform like Lendlord, which provides all the different rate options based on an individual scenario, is the way forward for a landlord.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your contribution,
Arieh.
We will continue on with the digitization of the landlord lifecycle next week, as I mentioned, and we are entering into ownership, management and growth, the next phase, and as I said, the longest phase. So please join us next week as this video series continues.